Good afternoon. This is our welcome to Aceit 8.1 briefing. We released Aceit at the very end of October, and now it's available for download on aceit.com. This presentation will go through and illustrate the new features that we've added with this version of the software. Okay, so I'm really thrilled to announce we've got a variety of new features in the software for you. As it turns out, and as I was building up this presentation, I think we really ended up in the end delivering more with 8.1 than I think we expected when we started working on the version that preceded the service packs to the 8.0 software. We're touching a variety of areas here. I'm going to kind of go through things in the order that I think most analysts will come across them when they're working with the tool. So I'm going to start with some things that are that'll help with general setup of your model and some general operability improvements. It's just how you interact with the software. I'll talk a little bit about some of the changes that we've made to the tree structure, and also some changes that we've made to sections, and that's to make us to improve how we're working within the input sheet and the interaction between the input sheet and the session explorer. We've got a series of enhancements to documentation. We've also expanded the content panes. We have quite a few new ones, and we've had some additions to the ones that we've already had. So I'll kind of walk through those. And then we've had some report additions, including a new feature that is creating the ability for you to be able to create an executive report of your with content from the ACE file. So I think that'll be something that people have been looking for a while. So that's exciting to see that finally in the software. I am going to dive in and show some of the new things that we have. The first thing that I want to highlight is that with Aceit 8.1, we do have a new file type, or a new file extension. So, throughout our history, and here I've kind of displayed, we're on the 6th file extension for Aceit with Aceit 8.1. Going back to our DOS days, we had the .ace files, and then we went to .acw files, and then we expanded to .aceit files. .aces files was next, and then with 8.0 we introduced the AceX file. With 8.1, because of some of the changes that we have made, we did need to go and create a new a file format for that. So that's kind of the reasoning behind the new file format, and it's a .acem file, standing for ACE model. The good thing about this .acem file and with 8.1 is we do have the ability to be able to allow you to work in 8.1 and save the file back using the file save as to a 8.0 service pack 1 or service pack 2 file. So we have a little bit of ability to be able to go, work in the software and go backwards. Of course, that means that you won't be able to invoke all of the new features. But we're messaging that to you, and I'll talk a lot about some of the things that we've been able to do this time around to help out with that problem. So we'll get into that a little bit later. Okay, so starting when you first open up an existing session in 8.1, you're going to see a prompt that will happen. And what the prompt is about is it's telling you that it may be moving some rows around in your ACE file. This is connected to some of the changes that we've made with the the sections and the tree structure, which I will talk about in a little bit more detail a little bit along the way. But I want to message this so that you're not, it's not unexpected that you're going to get this message when you first take an existing file, you open it in 8.1. It's going to explain that possibly some of the rows may shift. The reason those rows may shift is because we have changed the way that we are handling summary sections. That have a specific connotation of using the results summary column for information. Those are the detail information about what a summary section really is and how you denote that in ACE. If you have used any of that feature set, if those rows were not already at the top of the ACE file, we are moving those into a new folder, which is depicted here in the image of the session explorer with the red arrow. We've added this new summary section folder so we can treat those rows in a special way and have them be handled differently than the rest of the rows and the sections that are within the model. So you'll see this when you first open up a new set or an older session in 8.1. Next, when you go and we've had when you go and you look at the session options, or when you create a new ACE session, we've added a few things to that to make it easier to do that. So this is if you're going to create a brand new file, going to File New. At that time, you have to go in and you have to set up a series of settings for the session. The new things that we have added are going to be highlighted here with red arrows throughout the presentation. If you look at the in this particular area, if you look closely, you'll see that we've added the ability to be able to select a custom inflation table from the start. In prior versions of the software, you could not immediately go and select a custom inflation table when you created a new file. You had to create the new file, let the file create, and then you had to go back to the session options in order to get access to the custom inflation table. So we have now streamlined that. The other thing that you will find with 8.1 is that the Mill Standard 881E work breakdown structures and the Army CESs that utilize those the 881E or utilize the Mill Standard, they're all now up to the 881E version of those work breakdown structures. Going into session options, we've upgraded a few things in that area. If you, when you're in session options and you go to the inflation tab, if you highlight now over the system inflation tables, it will now tell you where your inflation tables are located on your machine. That is a very important, more so for people outside of Technology, because the government is set up quite a bit differently than the way we are. That allows us, or a support person, when you're working with them and trying to update your inflation, they may ask you for, can you hover over that so you can get the path for where the tables are, and then that way we can work to help you update those. In addition to the inflation update, we've modified a little bit on the options format page. It's really about streamlining the way that we're messaging how you can add or use the thousand separator or the currency symbol. We've just modified the way that the labeling that's associated with these formats. And then the last thing is, and I'll talk about this a little bit more when I show some of the changes that we've made to adding variables on the fly. There was a option that went into variable sections. It was called the variables option. That has been removed from this, and that's because we've made some improvements to the way the variable on the fly is working, and that section was no longer necessary. Looking at our new user settings. So before I was talking about the session options, this is now for you as a user, the user settings that you have on your machine, to help the way that you're interacting with the software. We've had a couple of changes. The first thing that we've done is we have we basically settled on two ways that you can view the software, either in a light mode or a dark mode. We've removed some of the extra themes that we had. This is so that it's easier for us to be able to maintain the software and just make sure that it's working well in just this light and dark theme. We've also added the ability to have a large and small font, or a regular and large font. So there's two font options if you'd like to increase the size of the text that you're looking at. In addition to the theme changes, when you're utilizing the software, there are some messages that come up that prompt you for different things. That you have an option in some of those prompts to basically say that you don't want to be messaged with that information again. There is, if for some reason you want those messages to come back, they are now part of the user settings. So you'll be able to bring back any of those messages that you've asked to not be told about again through this mechanism. Okay. This is kind of walking through that. So you can see on a couple of places where, we're telling you that, a full calculate may be required, and it's really pressing this little button. If you've checked this little button that says don't ask me again, that's what's going to make these messages not show up anymore. And then going to that control area underneath user settings, if you want to bring them back, you'll be able to see individually, you'll be able to control them through this mechanism. When a file opens, we have added the ability for a user to be able to define a file or a message when the file is being opened. This is available on the file menu. When you're on the info page, if you go to session protection, underneath there is now an option that says add an opening message. You as the user can go in and type in whatever you'd like there. This was originally added so that people could message if the session contains CUI. That was the main thing that we were thinking of. That message, when somebody gets your file and opens it, it will pop up immediately first, and that will message to somebody that, what's going on in the file. So if you want to have somebody see a message before they actually start working in the file, one that they have to click OK to in order to go through it, this mechanism is a way of doing that. And you can also password protect that as well. And there's the little options for that. I did not include that on this particular visualization. Okay, we have made some changes to the ribbons. We've typically, as we add new things to the software, we do go in and we tweak the ribbons. The main focus of what we've tried to do this version is a couple of things. First, we've been trying to simplify the approach for the ribbons, really remove places where we had duplicate icons on multiple ribbons. When we went through this exercises and started looking at that, the main place where we had a lot of redundancy was with our old construction ribbon. What we've actually done is removed that ribbon. All of the icons were already on the home ribbon. We had to add a couple to it in order to, to make sure that we had all of the icons accounted for. But this now gets us down to basically the four main ribbons, that are 5 if you count the file menu. But that is designed so people don't have to really be clicking around a lot, and also so that they don't have to remember, where things are in multiple places and things like that. So just take a look at those menus when you open up 8.1, and you'll see, I believe they're pretty streamlined and they're quite intuitive now. So you should be able to find things pretty quickly. There is a quick access toolbar that's up at the very top of the interface. We have added some mechanisms in there to allow the user to customize that quick access toolbar. If you press on the little down arrow that is all the way to the right of the quick access toolbar, that will open up the selection prompt that will allow you as the user to go in and add a series of the most common functions to the quick access toolbar. We've taken an approach here where we don't have every button, but we have the buttons that we believe are the ones that are the most frequently used. And that's just to manage the screen space and things like that. So the user can go in, add any commands that they want to the list here to the right side of the list. And they can also reorder them, so you can put them in the order that you like to have them in. We've expanded some of the zooming capability. Before, the zoom was really the entire interface. If you use the zoom that was in the bottom right-hand corner of the interface, and that's making the view smaller or larger, depending upon your preference. We have now created that the windows are now will act independently now, so you have control over the size of the session explorer versus the main pane versus the content panes. And then we still have the zoom down at the bottom that will control across the entire interface to try and keep all those things in sync. We've expanded some of the favorite functionality. So you can go in with favorites, you can go in and you can mark content areas in the software. These might be rows of the software, these might be reports. We have added to that the ability to be able to mark a data table, a milestone phasing profile, or a CDF, a risk CDF as a favorite. Those we call off-sheet items because they're not in the input sheet. They're not a row, technically a row of the session. So you can add those. And then we've also gone in and updated or expanded the ability of the favorites field so that you can go in and do text searches on the favorites. So it's really designed to help you get to the rows of interest as quickly as possible through either that favorite and then also through text string search. With ACE, you can create multiple windows within the interface. So in other words, if you have your input sheet open and you also would like to see the results open at the same time and have them be on multiple monitors, perhaps, you have the ability to do that. What we've done in terms of additions is we've streamlined the ribbon on this. When you add these other ribbons, or add these other windows, we have now streamlined the ribbon on top of the new ribbons, and we've also made it so that you have the ability to basically pin rows so that you'll be able to keep the sync on between the row that you're looking at in one of these windows and the row that you're looking at in another window. We've also added the favorites bar to these new windows as well. And that's just all designed to help you be able to, set up ACE to work on multiple screens and get the benefit of being able to see more of the ACE interface going more towards kind of a dashboard kind of approach. A couple other small operability things. We've added a spell checker now to the Session Explorer, so you can go in and check the spelling on the WBS descriptions that you have, and it has you have the ability to be able to add to the dictionary and control that just like you would in like it works very much like a word spell check. We've also expanded the way that, or the options associated with find and replace. We've added a couple of extra, we've streamlined the buttons here a little bit, so you can kind of see everything in one dialogue. We've also made it so that you can choose where you want to search across. Do you want to search across the current sheet that you're in, the selection that you have selected across the column, or do you want to look across all of the columns in the session for what you're looking for? And then when you, after you've typed in what you're looking for and you execute the search, then you can go in and see all the places where the text was found, the row number for it, the column that it was associated with, and the text itself. So it's all really in one, it's all fully in that dialogue, so you can kind of visualize the information more easily. Okay. So that kind of takes us through most of the operability updates. The next, probably one of the bigger things that we did was we spent some time looking at the tree structure and trying to make some improvements there. What our goals were to really strengthen the stability and the maintainability of the tree structure. And what I mean by the tree structure is, we've got the rows, we've got the way that the hierarchy works within those rows. When we went into 8.0, we rebuilt all of that, the tree structure interface in order to try and get to a improved interface that allowed us to do things like drag and drop rows and things like that, that we could not do in 7.5 or previous versions of the software. So we had, a good improvement on that in 8.0. I think there were a few places where, the interface, hesitated a little bit, and the improvements that we've made with 8.1 are all designed to help gain better performance with those kinds of things. So we've made some adjustments to the UI in order to help with that as well. What we learned during the process of looking at that is that if we really wanted to get some efficiencies with the tree structure, what we needed to do was take out the summary, the rows that were set up as summary section rows. These are rows that were utilizing the results summary column, where you had to go in and specify what kind of cost results you wanted to see for a set of rows. If we took that row, those kinds of rows, and we moved them out of the general tree structure and put them in their own area, then we could really get all the benefits that we were looking for. When we examined this, we looked at a lot of sessions and talked with a fair amount of users. Most users, if they had summary sections, they were already at the top of the ACE file. So we felt that if we created this new folder, which I'm going to show in a minute, we had that up at the top of the ACE session, that would work for the vast majority of the user base. And that would also give us a lot of benefits that we could have in improving the tree structure. So that was kind of the process that got us to the decisions to go in and work on updating this section of the software. So just to give a little bit more a background of what this used to look like, I'm going to talk about sections first, and then I'm going to talk about the summary sections in a moment, because these things are similar and interrelated, but there's also some distinctions here. So prior, I'm going to talk first about our prior section behavior. So in 8.0 and previous, sections really were used to control the rows that we wanted to display in reports. Okay, you would go in and your section was defined by entering a variable name into the unique ID column and preceding it with an asterisk. So if you look at the first image here, you can see the red arrows are pointing to the rows that were considered to be section headers. Each one of these sections was linear, meaning that the section was from the first row that had the asterisk unique ID all the way down to the next place where it saw an asterisk with a unique ID. And with this concept, we could only have linear sections. And what that means is we could not have nested sections. So when a user had to go and create a report, if they wanted to create a report that spanned across multiple of these ACE sessions, they actually had to go in to this section that's highlighted here at the bottom. And they've had to, down here, they had to go in and they had to check multiples of these check boxes in order to get the report that they really wanted to create for the rows of interest. So what we wanted to do was alleviate some of that and get to be able to have nested sections and to make it so that you really only, if you set up your sections correctly, you really would only have to select one section for the report that you were interested in. So that's kind of the rationale behind what I'm about to show. Oops. Okay, there we go. So where we ended up with this is, first of all, you can create a session through the Session Explorer. There is a button up at the top that is this little, S on top of S, which is our sections symbol. What this is doing is it's a mechanism for defining which rows are going to be included in the section. New sections can be layered. They're basically now layered on top of the tree structure. They're not integrated into the tree structure, and that was one of the things that gave us, quite a bit of more flexibility than we had before. So as part of this, the section you no longer need a comment row with the special unique IDs with the asterisk on them in order as the first row of a section. What you'll do is you'll utilize what I'm going to show here in a second on the right click menu in order to be able to create the sections. If you had sections in 8.0 and you are translating them into 8 and you open that file in 8.0, ACE will convert those older sections into this new mechanism for you. So it'll do the transition for you. Okay, and this just walks through how that process works. So you're in the Session Explorer, you right click on a row, you'll select sections. You'll see that you can either define a new section, you can see the existing sessions, you can edit those existing sessions, and then you can delete a section as well. And here you can see in this example that the row that I'm currently on, it's actually a member of more than one section. And therefore it can be, when I do reporting, I have the option of selecting these different areas. So there's a dialogue here that walks you through specifying what the first row is of the section, the last row is, and then you have control over the color that you'd like to display in the Session Explorer. As far as input sections, for the input variables, you can create these buckets by defining the first and last row of the section, and it works just like the WBS areas. But you can see how it's color coding and creating these different sections for you now in the new software. This image here is depicting on the left the previous setup for the software, and then on the right the new setup with 8.1. And so just to further summarize here, so there are now a series. Previously with 8.0 and prior, we really had two section folders that we had. We had a WBS section, we had an input variable section. With 8.1, you're going to have a third section, which is the summary section, is this summary section folder, and that will be up at the top of the ACE session. You cannot move these folders around. They are static, so it'll always be the summary sections folder first, followed by the WBS, and then the input variables below that. Okay. And then getting into the true summary sections, a lot of times these were used to calculate different breakouts of results. We had, quite a few people would use the SUMIF functions and do things like do an update on they would do a breakout by appropriation or some of the category columns that you have in set up in the file. In older sessions that opened in 8.1, you'll, as I talked about before, these rows are going to move, those rows are going to move now into this summary section folder. And then you'll be able to go and still set up, and as part of the defining the section process, at that point, you will say what type of result format you want to have for the results in these sections. So you don't have, there's no more going into a separate column to present that information. And here you can see an image of what that looks like. So for this, when you create a summary section in the, or a section in the summary sections folder, the edits summary section dialog is a little bit different here, where at the bottom you'll go in and you'll specify the result type. So as calculated will be whatever the ACE session is calculated as, and then you can go in and say whether or not, for example, you wanted this to be in then year dollars or same year dollars. Because we've added this sections and, kind of looking across the entire session, and we have, this concept of nested sessions now, what we did was we felt that we needed kind of a way to make it easier for users to manage their sections across the entire ACE file. So what we did was we added a sections manager. It's on the home page, or the home ribbon. There's a manage sections option, and the image here shows you what that looks like. Within here, you can go in and you can see what the first and last row is for each of the sections that you've created. You can go in and see, and you can change the first and last row through this dialog. You can go in and look at and change the number or the color for it. If it was a row that, or a section that had the ability to have the total for it, you can choose to hide the total for the rows or not, depending upon what the content is in that section. And then you can also see which one section in the ACE file is set up as the milestone profile, and you can also change that through here. And if you ever want to go in and do any reorganization of the sections, this is really the one place where you can go in and delete multiple sections in one place. So that's the sections manager. A couple other things with sections. We needed to, because we made changes to sections, we needed to update and modify the way that you could export a session so that it could be imported into another session, and then also the import section. So we streamlined the behavior of that feature set. It used to be called save section. So now we call it export section, and it used to be a multi-step dialogue. It's now all we're able to accomplish all the information that we need to gather in one step. And here we're also messaging what the variables that are going to be, if there are any issues with how the variables needed to be handled with the export, we have a mechanism for helping the user define that through this dialogue. And then in addition, we've had some changes with the import section, and that used to be called insert section before. So now we're importing from another file, and you basically you're picking the section that you want to import from the sections that you have stored on your computer. And then it'll show what the section is going to look like. And then you're basically going in and specifying where in the file, in the row structure, would you like that section to be imported. And then a couple other little details of how the import should be handled as well. Okay. I mentioned a little bit earlier that we modified some of the behavior when creating a new variable. One of the bigger things that we did in the 8.0 software is we added the ability to create a variable really as you were building the equation. So we call this building a input variable on the fly. We had the process that we had with 8.0. There were a couple of little quirks to that process. Giving it a little bit of a relook, we were able to streamline it a bit and really just reduce the number of things that you really had to do and make it just a little bit easier to get there. So we reordered the steps a little bit. So you enter in your variable name, you say what variable type it is, and we've reduced that down to 4 types. It's either going to be a cost that's got to have cost properties. It'll be a general that doesn't have any cost to it. Usually that's things for like technical characteristics. You could have a phase quantity. So that's really your IS phased rows in that area, and then you could have a date. And those are really the 4 kinds of variables that we need to keep track of, in terms of how ACE handles them. So we've streamlined it down to those 4 types. And then in addition to that, in terms of where to put that new variable in the file, we've streamlined that down to allow, the user to be able to select which section they want it to go to at the end. And that allows, and that's going to leverage the sections that you've already created using the section stuff that I just previously talked about. So that is the new variable on the fly behavior. Okay, a couple of quick things to data tables. We've added the ability for the data tables to be able to have $signs. We couldn't do that before, so people were having trouble copying and pasting data from Excel that had $signs into the ACE data tables. So we have made that easier at this point. Documentation enhancements. We did not have the ability to be able to put in a definition for the data tables, the milestone profiles, or the risk CDFs. 8.1 corrects that. When you have a data table, there is a little icon on the data table creation page. If the icon has a check on it, that means that there's documentation that's been entered for it. If it does not, that means that someone has not entered documentation for it. And if you want to add documentation to your data table, you just click that little icon and it will bring up the documentation pane for you to do that. And then we have reinstated the old load, unload documentation. However, it's now called documentation export and import. So as we had in previous versions, you could go and create a file that had all of the documentation in it. The complicating factor was, when we moved from 7.5 to 8.0, we went from row documentation to cell documentation. And so we have this new feature accounts for that. So it's going to identify for you the row and the cell that is associated with the documentation, and then somebody can edit that documentation and then import it back into the file. So you're able to do some documentation updates outside of the ACE file itself. Okay. And then we've also made a few upgrades to the documentation manager. Again, it's because we've added the documentation associated with the off-sheet items, that principally the data tables. The documentation manager will show the locations of where that documentation is as well. And then the other thing that we've added with this is we've provided a size column here that can help people understand the size of the documentation and how much size that it's taking up in terms of the entire, the size of the ACE, or how it's contributing to the size of the overall ACE file. If you've dealt with very large ACE files before, often there's like one or two documentation elements that people don't realize are really contributing to the size of the file. So this is intended to help with that. We've added a few content panes and made some additions to existing content panes. So you're going to see 3 new content panes, and then some additions to 4 of the other ones. And I'm going to walk through what these changes are in the next few slides. Okay, so the first thing we did on the visualization panes, we have now added illustrations for learning curves. We have a couple of different modes that you can look at. We have what's called an applied learning curve that shows you the curve and how it will behave across the rows phasing. And then we have a theoretical learning curve, and this is what would look like to a person of what they would more visualize in terms of a learning curve, where they see what the T1 is being interpreted as, and then it explains the slope going down as the cost improvement is being put across a fictional number of units here. So the units that are at the bottom of this visualization are not the units of the ACE session, they're just units in general, because what we're trying to do is give people a visual for the learning curve that they are trying to depict. And this is really this is how ACE is interpreting the values that they've entered. They want to see the results of the learning curve implementation. That is going and looking at either the results from the tabular results from the session, or some of the charting from the results of the session. And this does work with shared learning. So you can actually see here in this example here, there in the first few years from 2017 to 2020, there's a gray line. That is the row that this row is being shared with. So the green is the row that I'm currently on, and then the other it can do that. And I believe there's a question that says, can the learning visuals be in TY? And the answer to that is no, because this is not a result. It is looking at what the inputs are, the inputs are. So we're not actually doing any calculation or conversion here to create this. We're just visualizing the information that's been input into the row. Okay. We've added a new pane for calculation details. This is something that if you were a previous user of the software and you used the view calc details, that was part of the traceback navigator. That functionality is now back with 8.1, and it's part of our calculation details pane. So here you can see I've selected row 81 in this file. And this particular equation is a nested equation with a couple of t-tote functions in it. If you go and look at the calculation details pane, what it's doing is it's showing me the result of each of the variables, and then how different pieces of the equation are calculating, and then building that up across the up to the actual calculated result for the row. So here you can really get an understanding of how the calculation is working with that row, and you can see the operation being broken out, and then a description of it, the total values, and then the values by each of the fiscal years. A new thing that we've added is the ability to tag cells. This is in an attempt to allow users to go in and highlight individual cells of the file. Through our research with doing use cases, we found that really the vast majority of people that wanted to highlight or background highlight a cell, they were doing that for a purpose. You know, they wanted to highlight to maybe themselves or another person that may have been looking at the file. Hey, this is a place where we could possibly go back and update the methodology for this row. This is a place where we really should go and look at doing some type of objective uncertainty distribution entry instead of a subjective measure if we can get some time and look at some more data. Here's another set of rows where we really need a subject matter expert review. So by going in, what we ended up settling on is we've given you a place here where you can have 10 of these different tags. You can go in and specify what each tag represents, and you can go in and change the colors if you'd like. You have the option here of where you can turn the highlighting on or off when you're looking at the visual. So there might be some times where you want to just hide all those highlights. So you can use the toggle button here in order to do that. And then there might be other parts of the, as you're working on the file, where you really have gotten to a point where, you know, you're really not going to be able to do any more updates to methodology. So at that point, you can go in and say, hey, I really want to remove all of the red tags that I've added to the file, and I want to use that for something else. So we'll actually do that across the file for you all at once, so you don't have to go back and do that and undo those individually. In addition to you know, having the ability to see that within the input sheet, we've also created a content pane that's called the review tags pane that basically shows all of the tags that you've added to the file across the session. So you can see what tag is being used, what location it's being in, so which row or which data table it's at, and then the content of what is being highlighted. That's basically what the information that would be in that cell. We've had a couple other places where we've kind of made some additions on the cases pane. We added the ability to be able to check or uncheck all of the cases in the model. So there's one little new little compare checkbox that's in that cases pane that will allow you to do all check all the cases all at once rather than having to do each one individually. We've and that's really there's one more thing to content panes that I'll talk about in just a couple more minutes. I am going to run a couple minutes over, apologize for that, but there's a lot of content here, and I want to make sure everybody gets the benefit of seeing that. Haven't made a tremendous amount of adjustments or changes to the risk part of the software package. I think the most notable couple of features are that we are now, when you look at any of the risk statistics results or the reports, we have added the probability level to the mean column. That was not there before. So we used to have it in the point estimate column, but it's now been added to the mean column for all the places where we're showing the mean. And then we've also added the ability to be able to go in and review and remove any of the custom or the distribution functions or CDFs that were in the file that are not being referenced or used anyplace else in the file. So sometimes after you've worked with a file for a little while, somebody may have imported information from another area, you know, prior to you working with the file, and people don't realize that there is some information in this off-sheet item that's basically sitting in the file, but it's not being referenced anywhere else. So as part of being able to manage the size of the file, we wanted to provide an easy way for you to go in and quickly remove those CDFs. So now this cleanup wizard, which you activate by being in the Session Explorer, going down to the risk CDFs, doing a right click, and then asking to remove any of the unused CDFs. And then this here is exemplifying that we've removed 4 CDFs that were not being used in the session, or it's telling you that there's 4, and then when you hit yes, it will go ahead and do that. Okay, let's talk a little bit about some backwards compatibility things. So with talking with the user base, it's very apparent that we have different organizations that can update the software to the latest version of the software immediately, and we have other users who cannot do that. And also we have a situation where those users are related to another. So in other words, maybe headquarters has already upgraded, but a program office in the field hasn't been able to upgrade it great yet, or vice versa, right? The program office has updated to a new version of the software, but they're going to be sending the file to somebody who's going to review it, and their system has not been upgraded yet. And we understand, that's the reality of what's going on out in the field. And so we felt like we need to do more to help people in those situations. So what we've done is we've created a backwards compatibility strategy. And that's really designed to, help people be able to, work with their colleagues that are using, and what we decided to do was use versions of 8.0. So I can't go back and help people, that are still in the 7, the 7 series. This is really about helping people 8.1 to 8.0, and then also we're going to use this strategy going forward. Okay, so first of all, you can't open an .acem file that was created with 8.1. You're not going to be able to open that in 8.0. Okay. But what we can do is we can provide the ability for people to be able to understand what they've added to the file that makes it so that they can't go back. And then also allow them to have, if they want to stay within the ability of being able to go back to that previous version, we are messaging for them when they are about to use a feature that's going to make it so that they can't open the file in 8.0 anymore. And we also have the ability to be able to, to work in 8.1 and save back to a service pack to 8.0 service pack 2 or 8.0 service pack 1. So the way that this is kind of gonna work. So I'm showing this as this mess as a real, way of explaining that, this is a highly detailed, issue. And what we did was we looked at, quite a few different file flow maps. And I think we've gotten to something that is going to be, quite helpful for the user base that we're going to build on going forward. What you will be able to do is when you have an old file and you bring it into 8.1, if you go to the info page, you will see that the first thing that's going to, you'll see is that the file will be opened with compatibility mode. And what that will allow you to do is first of all, it's going to tell you what version of the file it had and what it's going to try and work with. And you'll be able to select which files you want to, which file type you want to be working with. You have the ability to just say, you know what, we just convert the file to a .acem file because I want to work in 8.1. I want to take advantage of all the new features, and I'm not going to worry about having to give this file to somebody that doesn't have the latest version of the software. But if you want to maintain that compatibility, you will keep this on. As you are working in the software, if you utilize or invoke one of the new features that where we cannot, where you're basically entering information that previous versions of the software will not understand, we are going to message that to you. Sometimes that will be a warning message that says that, these things are, you're going to lose colors and things like that. In other places, they are, they will be messaged as a fatal error, meaning we can't, it's going to affect the structure or something of the file. So we're messaging those. And then we have, when you try and save the file to one of these older formats to maintain it, we're going to message to you again why we can't do that, and give you an option to say, do you want to go and modify the file, or do you want to convert to the new file type? I believe that this will help people better understand, the new things that they're adding to the file and how that will affect, people that can't be in the same version. In addition to the messaging and at the time that you save the file, we have also added a new content pane that's called the Compatibility Analyzer pane, and that will show all of the places where you have invoked a new feature that cannot be saved back to the previous file type. And it's here that you, through this drop down here that says analyze compatibility of the current session 2, it's here with this drop down that you will be able to select whether or not you want to analyze compared to 8.0 Service Pack 1 or 8.0 Service Pack 2. And then you'll be able to run basically the set of tests against those different versions of the software. And then our intent is that we will add to this as we continue to expand this to the software in the future. And then you can see, what things that are keeping you from saving to the older version, and then you as the analyst can make decisions about what you want to do with that. We've also, so moving on from backwards compatibility stuff, we have also made some improvements to the charting capability. Main thing here is we've taken some things that used to be in the chart ribbon and we've moved them into the settings, and we've made them more consistent across all of the different types of charts that we have available to the user. So one of the chief things that has moved here is this level of visibility. You'll be able to see how you can, move to different levels of visibility that you're showing in these charts, and then also lock that level of visibility much more easily than we had with the buttons when they were part of the ribbon. We've also a couple of minor tweaks, but I think that are helpful. To the convergence chart, we've added a target line so people can see, where, when we message our rule of thumb about convergence, which we say is at 0.5 change between the number of iterations and the 10,000th iteration. We're now putting that on the chart so it's easier for people to see and find that target line. So that's the charts. We've also had a couple of additions to reports. We've added a new report for data tables. We've added a new detailed documentation report, and we've added some reports under documentation that are basically the tabular format of that detailed documentation report. And then the main reports update is the executive summary. And the other thing here is you can now also create reports, and they can be exported straight into Word and Excel without having to generate them first in the ACE environment. So that should save some time if you really are interested in getting the report in Word or Excel. So just showing what some of these reports look like. The detailed documentation report, what it basically is doing is showing the description of the documentation element, where it's at in the file, and then the text that's part of that documentation. And some people like to see that in a tabular format, and some people it's more helpful to see that in a more of a Word document. So depending upon which one you'd like to use, you'd either come at it through the documentation report or the detailed documentation report. We've added a specific report for data tables. So you can create a report of the data table that has been entered. And one of the nice things about this report is you have an option on the cost values to either display them in the report as they were entered in the ACE file, or normalize them to the session year. And then the real big addition to the reports is our new executive summary report. So this is really designed to help you create a document that has some text and some visuals, meaning either a chart or content information from a row, or from a data table, or from the milestone profile, or from the documentation that are in the file, and create a document that you could provide to somebody else as the executive summary of what's going on in the ACE file. So what we've done is we've provided an area where an analyst can go and first design the report. They can pick from either entering, putting in blocks for text with headers and subheaders and so on. They can also add information about a row in the ACE file. So if you want to get the WBS number or the value for a row and include that in your report, you can do that. A couple of the different offsheet items, we've depicted those. The documentation for a row, and then also having the charts be part of it. So you can really build a nice little document here that's showing information from the report. What you end up doing is you're creating a framework first for where, for what you want the overall report to look like. So you're picking from these content elements, and here you can see we've added a header or a title to the report, a header. We've typed in a little bit of narrative that it's explaining what's going on with the row. This first content area is telling me for the point estimate case for a particular appropriation and for a particular row or WBS element in the row, what the value is for the total result. And then here I've added a chart where I can pick which row and which chart type I want to include in the report. Okay, so you're creating this framework first, basically mapping out, and you could think of that as a template for the report. And then what you do is you say you want to publish the report. And when you publish the report, what it's doing is it's going back to the ACE session and it's grabbing the information out of the ACE file and making it part of your report here. So then after you, and here you get a chance to preview the report first, and then you can publish the report, and it will create for you a PDF of the narrative that you have with all these different pieces coming out of the ACE file, building up to this document. And if you want to make changes to your framework or template, you can save it, and then you can go back and edit it at another time. And this is an area that we've got the main functionality in here, bits and pieces that we want to get working. We will be adding to this with later versions of the software. Things like table of contents functionality and those kinds of things, we have not gotten to that kind of stuff yet, but I think what we've given this part is some of the key pieces of functionality that will allow you to, get things into a PDF, and then you can go in and finesse it more from there. And like I said, we are going to expand this part of the functionality, in the future. This was a big step to get it to this point. Okay. Last couple of things. I mentioned earlier that the reports can go straight to Word and Excel. When you create the reports now through the report manager, you can go in and specify where you would like it to go. And narrative reports can go into Word, Excel, or a PDF, and tabular reports can go into Excel and PDFs. And then the last thing that I wanted to show is during some of the service packs to 8.0, we added in the ability to be able to create a JSON file of some of the case inputs and results of the ACE session, and you could select which case you wanted to go to. And then when you go through the export, when you're in the cases pane, there is an option to export cases to export cases, inputs, and results. When you select that button, it will allow you to select which cases you want to export. And then it will ask you, where do you want to export the information to? And you can choose between an XML file, an ACES file, and the new thing that we added is this JSON file. That JSON file is ideal for wanting to take the information out and put it out into a Power BI or another type of data visualization tool. A JSON file is a standard format that you can do for that. With the 8.1 release, we added some additional information, to the export. So when we did this, with the service packs, was really the case information and the row and things like the row and some basic data. We've added to it quite a bit of additional data. And so this is the full list of what you can export with the JSON file as of the 8.1 software. Okay. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and take a breath, because that was a pretty intense hour of trying to share with you as much as possible about the 8.1 software. I will tell you, if you want to get more information, the main place to go is to go to aceit.com. We through aceit.com in the user resource area, we have some information or additional information that we are posting regularly throughout the year. The first thing I recommend is that you sign up for our newsletter, and typically we will send that out once a month or every other month, and we provide information about what's going on with the software. We throughout the year, we publish a series of what we call online help articles. Those articles go in and take one topic and dive into it into a more detail. It's usually a narrative document with some visuals that show you really how to do something throughout the software suite. There are about 20 articles that are out on the website right now that you can that talk about all sorts of various things. And like I said, we will continue to add to them as people start working with the 8.1 software. We do have some training available. We will be updating all of the training courses to include the features from the 8.1 software. Different classes get different pieces add to it based on the level of what the new feature is. And then you are welcome to contact Aceit support and the Aceit support email is here. And as I mentioned at the top of this presentation, the slide deck that we have for this presentation, we will be posting it on aceit.com, and we will also have a recording of this session there.